What part of your inner being is satisfied by a work of art? And why is this satisfaction something we all crave? Subjective as it all is, good art makes us feel more appropriate about ourselves, and bad art makes us feel inappropriate about ourselves. Looking at works from different time periods and different civilizations, you wonder where the strictly enforced values come from that these people rely on for propriety's sake. In medieval China, if you tried to paint landscapes in color, rather than the trademark black and white, were you a social outcast? And in Japan, with their lovely two-dimensional paintings that emphasize flat planes of color and graphic quality that inspired the Western artist Vincent van Gogh, what happened if you tried, as an artist in feudal Japan, to give three-dimensional volume to a painted figure, like a Renaissance portrait? And why are African figurines distorted in their trademark manner? And was it illegal to paint them bright rainbow colors? Then there's the famous tribal masks, the main place where we see African painting. Why don't the pre-colonial Africans paint on flat panels or latter-day canvases, or create frescoes like the Europeans? Why does it feel inappropriate to even suggest this, like I'm being rude somehow by saying this out loud? Something about our communal sense of propriety, and what is acceptable for public display. What rules does it follow? Why do values vary so much from culture to culture? When you make something yourself, you instinctively create according to what you need in order to feel appropriate about yourself. No one ever told you specifically to do it this way. It's just what you developed over the years in order to cope with a world that makes you feel so inappropriate about yourself. And hopefully whatever you create can help the rest of us with that very same struggle. Take a visit to the monastery and enjoy a lecture from Sandro Sebastian, the art monk. There are so many ways that we as humans, those conscious, sensitive beings born into this world, try to make peace and find some sense of security in a corrupt world that no one asked to be a part of. When you realize just how much toxic behavior is out there, and after you have the scars to prove it, you start to train yourself to take a harder look at the world around you, to prevent being hypnotized or manipulated. You then wonder, how is that intellectual muscle flexed? How do we practice looking harder at the world around us and taking less for granted? Because what you don't consider when you're young and still living at home with your parents is that your blind spots, your superficial oversights, are something that people will use against you once you leave home. And it's not even illegal, but it will cost you greatly. Art is a way of describing that part of the universe that we don't see with our eyes, and that part of our humanity that we don't always know what to do with, but with which we have to do something, if you catch my meaning, so that we can feel appropriate about ourselves, and to reinforce how we know we're not animals. When it comes to the task of civilizing the future and making sure that life doesn't become needlessly difficult, we decide to separate the sacred and the profane and tell the young people that this over here is the proper way to behave and this over here is the improper way to behave. We aggressively separate the two, and when you are young and inexperienced, it looks like the rules exist for no particular reason other than to ruin your fun. Like the adults just want to stifle you and make sure you miss out on the party. When you as a youth argue against your parents about what should be permissible and what is foul, the wise parent gives the example that I heard someone give me when I was a child, an example that I never forgot. An adult might say, when it comes to the sacred and the profane, young one, and our mission to civilize the future, why don't we simply eliminate the line that divides the two, sacred and profane, that is? The adult might use the example of curse words, profanity, and vulgar words that we don't use in public. The philosophical question is, why have those curse words at all? Why not just make every word okay to say in public? If all four-letter words and cuss words are no longer labeled as inappropriate, then it solves the problem of profanity, right? When people use those bad words now, it isn't cursing. No one will curse because no one can curse anymore. Well, son of a bitch, Wouldn't that shit solve the motherfucking problem, you goddamn cocksucking assholes? Obviously, even as a child hearing that, even if you are somewhat spoiled, you feel something inside of yourself hesitate at that suggestion. Whoa. Like the way to make the world more civilized is to lower our standards. Logically it seems sound, but this calls into question the line between the sacred and the profane, and why we have it as human beings. It is part of our identity and a psychological need we have not just to exist and not just live, but to feel a sense of propriety as we do it. For our self-esteem, we need to know that there are bad words and crude things that one does not say in polite company. We need to know that so that when we are in polite company, not using those bad words, we feel ourselves being proper, observing the proper etiquette. We feel ourselves on the sacred polite side and away from the vulgar profane side. In short, we have to know that there is evil so that we can feel ourselves being good. Do we see? As human beings, we need to know we are not animals, and we need to know how we are not animals. All manner of art, music, literature, and humanities you might call a science of self-esteem. So I'm going to perform an exercise using references from popular culture. Mass broadcast media that starts out as hugely controversial when first released, but maintains a specific niche in our culture to the point where we just let it live. And it becomes the new normal, lowering our standards and making life a little bit more difficult. Now, there's a genre of humor that is widely celebrated and cherished by our culture today, the independent, cheeky wise ass that ribs society a little bit and makes ironic observations, but ultimately has the overall worldview of a spoiled little teenager living at home with his parents, the overgrown adolescent man with his lowbrow humor. All of that is reflected in the writing of this kind of television phenomenon, but I want to talk about the visuals. That aspect of this show doesn't get enough attention. Has anyone ever actually tried to figure out what is Lisa Simpson's hairstyle? I mean, Bart has spiky hair, Homer is bald, and Marge has a perm, I'm guessing, of some sort, even if it is crudely drawn. I'm not criticizing the drawing ability, because it is a cartoon. I'm criticizing the choice of hairstyle, whatever that is. What the hell kind of little girl would wear her hair like this? There's no reason to be an asshole. So I've done a little redesign here, not changing a Simpsons character into another character, because there would be no lesson in that exercise. It's not about me not liking the way they look or wanting the show to be a different show. It's about taking your already existing drawings and removing the asshole factor, which has become too prevalent in today's society. And while we're looking at her, there's always been the ripped up hem of her little skirt running along the bottom, like someone took a pair of scissors and cut that pattern along the bottom of her dress. I don't understand the point of that. What kind of little girl would wear something like that? That's not who that segment of the population is. Little girls, I mean. There's no reason to be an asshole, dude. Not with kids watching. And then there's always been the question of why an 8-year-old girl needs to wear something strapless, something that shows her shoulders. She's 8. Who needs to look at her shoulders? There are other minor details I've shifted here that you can spot, but do we understand the point of the exercise? I'm not trying to change your show into another show. It still feels like looking at Lisa Simpson. I'm just removing the asshole factor. Is there any reason to be an asshole about it? Now, if you are someone watching this internet video of mine right this moment, especially if you are my age or younger, and these characters were immensely popular during your childhood, you probably never noticed how jerky they look, because no one ever gave you something to compare it to. Now that I've shown you a more sophisticated, less abrasive way of drawing them, you kind of lose your tolerance for the original versions now, don't you? They look like they are drawn by somebody's retarded nephew. Now again, Very subtle design details that aren't trying to transform the character's identity into someone else's. My own personal opinion on these characters is not needed here. It can still be your show, can still be your character designs. We are just trying to be polite to the audience, so they don't have to feel like they are babysitting a retard. Bart's spiky hair is his signature thing. I've just styled it so that it's at a more stylish angle, lengthened his sleeves a bit, and gave him a short V-neck collar. I also lengthened his shorts, but they are still shorts. And I've altered the shape of his shoes, so that there is a tongue of the shoes now acknowledged. It's still Bart Simpson, and the differences might go unnoticed at first, but do you feel that there is at least less awkward tension here? We are just removing the asshole factor, decreasing the anxiety. Now, this one might prove a bit more controversial. You are taking away Homer's white shirt and giving him a striped vest. I understand that might not be everyone's cup of tea. But the main thing is his hair. The little hints of hair on top of his head, which no longer stick up, but I've brushed down. And that uppercase M, that is the little bit of hair that appears over a bald man's ears. That hint of hair on the sides, you can still have that there. It's part of the character's design, yes, but do you have to be an asshole about it? You can tell me how much of a difference this makes, even you people that like to defend your right to be a moron in today's world. I'm sure you'll be up in arms about this, but not in terms of changing the character into something else or someone else. We are just removing the asshole factor. There's no reason to make everything in society harder once this content becomes the new standard. Up until this point, you, as the viewer, probably never considered what I'm saying. No one ever showed you a more relaxing way of designing these characters. And by comparison, you can see how much anxiety the groaning designs create. I've never understood Marge's hair. Not that you have to lower it, or have it hang down, or give her bangs or something. You can keep the same basic idea. It's your show. It's just, why do you have to be an asshole about it, man? This Bride of Frankenstein thing seems to be your overall vibe here. That's your choice, but let's draw it in a way that isn't so jerky, dude. Here I've made it more like a late 50s, early 60s housewife beehive type hairdo. And there are slight bangs, yes, but not hanging over her eyes. It's still Marge. With green outfit and orange pearls, I just covered her shoulders and gave her an actual top and skirt. Not to mention the collar, just so it looks like an outfit that an adult woman would actually wear. Just so she doesn't look like she's drawn by a retard. It's still your show. No one's trying to take it away from you. We just want to be polite to the audience, man. There could be kids watching. There's no reason to be a douche, especially when it comes to women and children. Sheesh. Of course she still has her pacifier. I'm not insane. And I know that her hairstyle has to mimic Lisa Simpson's, so it does. And she still has her blue bow, because we're not animals. I've just repurposed it as a hair clip, holding a little baby ponytail of sorts. Now let's have the group shot. Let's see them all together on the couch. Ba 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 da ba 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 da 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 ba da 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 da. It's not like I haven't enjoyed this show for years. When I was a kid, they exploded in popularity back in the 90s. Not that a kid should be watching that show, but I do get what these characters mean to people our age, whether or not older people like that or not. As you can see from how I drew them. And it's not like I don't understand cartoons. They don't have to look like the Sistine Chapel, but I also do believe in a communal sense of propriety and that human self-esteem is not made of stone. If you are going to show something to the public and we do not know who you are as the creator, especially for a grown adult man, you have to keep certain parts of your personality tucked in, bro. You can't just let your ass hang out there, man, even if it makes lots of money. That doesn't excuse blurring the line between the sacred and the profane. That's right, Simpsons. You parody everyone else, but who parodies you? Yeah. I still don't get what the hell Lisa's hairstyle is, or why that potato sack of a dress. And it's a little girl. It's like you're making fun of that part of the population. Why are you so protective of Lisa, Sandro Sebastian? I think it's because I feel like she would be a fan of mine. But anyway, judging aesthetics and what kind of person is designing the visuals we fill our lives with, I notice it's an area of your lives where you are all completely exposed. Since no one trains you in this part of the human identity, you're all as naive as children. Any random weirdo can just walk up to you and say whatever he wants, and you'll just listen to him because you don't know any better. These figures only look obnoxious now because someone showed you an alternative. So you're saying, Sandro, that this is how you would design these characters? Is that it? No, this is not how I would design them. I still think they are generally hideous. If it were my decision, my design would be completely different from top to bottom. But that's not the hypothetical job here. The job is to act as art director and take your design, your aesthetic, and wipe away the asshole factor, like a wet rag across a dirty windshield of a car. Because this is going to be broadcast to a world full of strangers, man. Other random adults who are not your parents or the teachers at school. Not the grown-ups who are legally required to babysit you. I'm not trying to take your show away from you. It's still your show, your concept. There's just no reason to be an asshole. This is what capitalism turns everything into. Like if something makes a lot of money, then that makes it the right thing to do, that all-American attitude, or some such nonsense. That might be how America works. That's just not how the world works. If we're ever going to bother with the difference. And this is also what your culture becomes when high-level jobs and positions are given to somebody's retarded nephew just because he's white and has the right connections, in case you're wondering what the big discussion is around such things. These people look at a community of poor brown and black people, whether here in the US or abroad, and they don't think there's anyone like me living there, like Sandro Sebastian, in those poverty-stricken ghetto and slum communities. They think it's not possible that there might be someone worth investing in. No, the good ones naturally ascend and make it out. Only the bad ones get stuck there. Like our system is just that perfect. Well, you better hope so, because the way that God sees people is certainly not the way that people see each other, Whitey. Well, there you have it. I've thrown down my staff. You watch that staff turn into a serpent and gobble up your 2 serpents. Then I grabbed the tail of that serpent, and you watched me turn it back into a staff. Yet you still want to continue. Let me tell you that there are certain kinds of power you do not want to challenge. You remember what happened to the last guy who tried to challenge this kind of power? Didn't go so well for him. Your court magicians might try and mimic the same trick, but we will all know it's a trick. They put up a curtain and wiggle their fingers and say the magic words, and make it look like a transformation has occurred. What I'm doing is no trick. This is the will of the Almighty, so I'll say it once again. Let my people go. Boys Bleed is a fantasy adventure short novel written and illustrated by Sandro Sebastian. It's about 30-something pages only, magazine thickness with illustrations laced in with text. The story is centered around an adolescent boy that has some trouble with a local street gang from a rival school, and trouble with the gang at his own school. In this community where role models are scarce, the young man has a chance encounter with a spirit from the past. Bottled up in an antique urn owned by the boy's foster mother, an ancient warrior enters into the kid's system and they begin to sync up internally. The boy sees the warrior's memories and begins to gain his physical abilities as well. All of a sudden, the young man's struggle against the neighborhood street toughs is not so bleak. They spend time outside in meditative trances, learning from each other. What follows is an account of what another kid witnessed when happening upon our hero one afternoon.
Me and Lorenzo, my buddy, are hanging at that street by the park. We're seeing people passing on bikes, jogging and everything, and we're not thinking we'll see anyone we know. But we see this kid that looks familiar. At least, I thought I seen him walking around here before. Me and Lorenzo saw him sitting there all cross-legged and meditating like some Buddhist monk. We cracked up a little. We were hanging at this park over there, north of Marin Street. The Caden High School kids go there and chill. At Caden High, we're always hearing about fights and rivalries between us and Juicy High. Lorenzo and me never took sides officially, I guess, but when you're a student at Caden, you stick up for the rep. It's just how it goes. But this kid we saw, sitting on the grass, all still and stiff like some statue, I think it was him. They said some kid whooped the ass of the Caden High gang leader. They're called the Leather Knuckles, and the leader, Westerner, is this kid that no one messes with. Don't know what makes Grass Meditation Boy over here so sure of himself. Maybe he's loyal to some Juicy High gang now. Must be crazy. He's gotta know what happens when you do that at Caden. Sitting about 20 feet away on the grass, the guy didn't see us or hear what we were saying, but I was saying, "Hey, that's that one kid." And Lorenzo says, "Who? Him? Do we know him?" I said, "Nah, we don't, but he's the kid that beat up Wesner." "I heard about that," Lorenzo said. Somebody said he took the leather knuckles leader down to the pavement in like 2 seconds. Swung like lightning. Wonder if it's true. So I'm all, let's see if he's as bad as they say. And I suddenly eye some fist-sized concrete chunk in a pile. It's a little sidewalk construction zone with no one around but orange cones. I reach out and pick up the fist-sized rock. Can you get his head? That'll wake him up, Lorenzo said. So then I arc my arm 1 time, 2 times, judge the distance, and heave this overhead lob. The rock flies in a perfect arc with that unsuspected Nancy still sitting perfectly still, his back facing us. He ain't moving while the projectile barrels down toward him. Damn fool won't even see it coming. Lorenzo and I are silent and still. Rock gets closer, about to knock him one. Then, I don't know what the hell I saw for sure that day, but almost like a praying mantis strike. The kid who just moments before wasn't twitching a muscle while he was in that meditation mode or whatever, jerks his head sideways and the rock in full downward trajectory sails clean past his head. And listen here, not only did the guy dodge the rock like he saw it coming from behind, but extended his right hand and caught the thing before it hit the ground just in front of him. Bare hand. No pain. No flinch. Lorenzo and me are freaking out here. The hell he just do? Lorenzo said. This freak got eyes in the back of his head or something, I say. And after that, with us frozen still, the kid turns to us and stares. He still may be 20 feet away and stands, gaze on us unbroken. We're not sure whether he's coming over or not. His face looked serious. But after maybe a 5-second stare down, he actually smiles. We are confused. He turns away from us and pulls his arm back, rock in hand, and launches that sucker across the pond in the park. Now, I'm not lying when I say it launched like a damn torpedo and skipped over the lake's far side and straight up lodged into a tree trunk. We heard the sound all the way from where we were. Bam! And that tree was hurting. We looked at the tree with the rock now permanently part of its trunk and looked back at the kid who we heard beat up Westerner. He's looking at his new handiwork from across the lake, splintered tree trunk, then rotates toward us and gives this friendly wave. We took off and never went back there.